Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of our Undiscovered Metric podcast. I am Jessica Cardonick, VP of Product Marketing at Adverity. And today I'm really excited to be joined by Landon Perry, VP of Ad Measurement and Data Analytics at Greenline Media. Today, we're going to be talking about all things data management and how best to leverage data to achieve optimal marketing performance and streamline campaign reporting. Landon, welcome to our podcast. We're really excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. So I would say let's go ahead and dive in. I know we've got a lot of really interesting content to cover. In terms of getting started with setting up your data management system, I guess what would you say the secret recipe is to get started, or kind of the approach that you've taken to get your data management system in place?
I'd say our secret sauce, at least for us here at Greenline, we get to control kind of the full funnel of the data, the data pipeline. So, all of our clients, we're working with advertising data, data from, clients' websites. So we start the process by, the data collection on the website, pixeling the site, setting up, website analytics, platforms like Google and Facebook. So our secret sauce is really like keeping in mind, like we know how the data is going to be at the end of the funnel. So making sure that we're capturing the data in the best way possible, to try to cut out any needs for, data cleaning or data transformation. So yeah, we start at the beginning kind of with the end in mind of, we know it's ultimately going to end up on a client dashboard, and the clients are going to have these questions. Let's make sure that, we're capturing everything that we need. But also, trying to think through future opportunities, future needs, and yeah, really kind of start at the beginning, follow the data through that pipeline of are we capturing what we need? Are we storing the data in a way that's scalable and future proof? Are we transforming it in good ways that don't tend to break? And then are we visualizing the data that's easy to understand? Does it actually answer client questions? Are we providing good insights, things like that?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's easy to get sort of bogged down into all the detail, but ultimately, what you're saying sort of helps to ensure that your whole strategy, I guess, was more purpose driven and really aligned to kind of the objectives and what you're trying to get out of it at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, always keeping in that kind of end result, because it's a very technical job, and I think it's easy to kind of enjoy and get bogged down in the technical details, but keeping in mind like this, we're capturing this data, we're transforming this data for a reason. Like we're not just doing it for fun. So there is this end result, and keeping that in mind throughout the whole process. So we're not capturing data that we don't need, but also that we're doing, everything that we do is kind of with a purpose for that end result.
That makes sense. And then I guess just a follow-up question is, I would imagine that you try to sort of have a process where I wouldn't say you have a one size fits all, but I guess most of your clients are tracking sort of the same thing. So you can kind of build a framework and then kind of rinse and repeat, I guess, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we have found, we've tried the custom approach. Every single, client gets their own unique, different setup. And we found over the years that even when we do that, over time, everyone kind of comes back to the middle of there's the basic, metrics, the basic dimensions that everyone cares about. Again, we're talking about advertising data. So it's the impressions, clicks, and costs, whatever your conversion metric is. We're segmenting that data by campaign, by ad, by maybe device or time of day or something like that. So yeah, we've definitely figured out the freedom and flexibility that people don't like the word template, but a standardized approach to data governance, data pipelines, things like that. And it's very freeing of when you have that standard. Number one, we know exactly what data we should have, but we found that we can catch data anomalies a lot faster too, because if you know exactly what shape your data is supposed to be in, what data you're supposed to be or receiving every single day, it's much easier to spot the outliers of, oh, hey, something's off. This metric, which is a big metric to the client, it's purchases or something like that. Suddenly it's zero. That's an obvious outlier. Something's off, something's broken. We need to go look at it. As opposed to, if everything is kind of custom and all over the place, when you have as many clients as we have, it's harder to catch those outliers.
That makes total sense. And I guess that brings me to my next question around the risks of poor data management. Obviously, one of the things you just said was the opposite, the inability to spot outliers. But any other risks of poor data management or mistakes that you've made or you've seen with your clients that you're willing to shed light on?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk, and I think this probably happens to everyone, um, when you have poor data management, people start to not trust the data. They start to ask, a lot of questions, good questions, but when you have you have a lot of data anomalies creeping into your systems, they're not going to trust it. I mean, again, many of our clients, we have, just case in point, we have some e-commerce clients. We're coming up on, in the United States, one of the biggest holiday times of the year, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. If you are having some anomalies, some issues creeping into the data, they're not going to trust it, and and that oftentimes in the advertising world, that lack of trust starts reflecting on the agency itself. Like, if I can't trust the data, how do I know the people managing my Google ads, my Facebook advertising? How do I know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? How do I know my marketing dollars are actually working? So I think that's the biggest risk of poor data management is you don't want your clients to not be able to trust the results like that. I often tell people on my team here at Greenline that our one of our biggest responsibilities as the data team is we are responsible for showcasing the work of the agency. That's the ultimate, billboard of this is what our agency does. The end result. We're driving this value for your business, whether that's a KPI or purchases or something like that. So if we can't do that, then it starts breeding distrust and wondering, is this the right place for us? Is this the right agency? So yeah, the what we talked about, establishing that full funnel approach, establishing that kind of standardization, that really helps in making sure, again, data anomalies happen, things break all the time. We're dealing with lots of websites out there, dealing with APIs that we don't always control. So our goal is not necessarily to say we're never going to have a data anomaly, we're never going to have a data issue, but being able to catch those quickly, being able to resolve them as quickly as possible. That I think is what we're really shooting for, and how we guard against that poor data management and that lack of trust that can happen.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. What would you say is the main pain point when it comes to client reporting?
For us, it's the diversity of clients that we have. So we have like over 200 clients, and they range from all over the board. We have some auto dealership groups, we have e-commerce clients, we have alcohol brands, financial institutions, startups, app developers. It's all over the place. So as you can imagine, there is a diversity of data connections that we have to make. Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok, Google Analytics, display partners, diversity of websites, and whatever their KPIs are. An e-commerce website is going to have different KPIs than an auto dealership group is going to have, in the sense of what's important and what they're trying to drive. And then just a diversity of like campaigns and ads that they're running, tactics and how they want to label those things as prospecting versus consideration, or upper funnel versus middle funnel. So it's hard to keep it straight in our heads sometimes, I will admit. Again, the standardization really helps. At the end of the day, whether you are an auto dealership group or an e-commerce website, at the end of the day, we're still basically spending money to serve ads to drive a KPI. So that, I think that helps us kind of keep it straight. Sometimes metrics might be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, it really is, the same. Um, but yeah, that's the biggest challenge is keeping it all straight. Remember, jumping between clients, oh, I need to build a dashboard over here, or oh, I have a data anomaly over here, and jumping between all those different types of clients. Yeah, it can get it's fun, but it can definitely it can be challenging.
Um, my next question is around, I guess, trusting your data, which I know we already covered. So, if you have any other insight in terms of like what it takes to trust your data outside of kind of building that, I don't want to say templated model, but that making sure that all of those things are in place. I guess, what does it take to trust your data?
Yeah. And this is something I kind of a little bit of a soapbox for myself here here at the company is at least in the advertising world. Again, I want to caveat that. I think we have to remember where this data is coming from and what the data is. It's so one thing I always say is it's best to keep in mind that we're looking at this data and asking the question, is it directionally true, not necessarily reality true? And the reason for that is a lot of the data that we work with is coming from third parties. You know, Website analytics, all of our clients are running on Google Analytics, and obviously that's a free, platform. And they recently made the switch to GA4, and there's a lot of talk online about, oh, Google's sampling our data and it's not 100% accurate. And the same thing with all the advertising platforms, Google Ads, Facebook, TikTok. I mean, we're getting this data from these sources, these third parties, and we don't have 100% insight into how this data is being generated. They have their own models, their own sampling methods. Um, so, I think we have to keep in mind what this data is, the limitations of the data. Um, but I would always tell our clients and our team members here at Greenline is we don't have to worry about this 100% reality accurate to be able to make good decisions. We make decisions off of sample data all the time, even in our regular lives. I mean, today, I'm in Dallas, Texas. I based my wardrobe off of sample data of the atmosphere in this local area. It doesn't, I'm not going out there and testing, if it's 100% accurate right now, the forecast that I checked this morning. Of course, I understand it's a trend, it's an average, but I feel confident that I can go outside. I'm going to be, dressed appropriately, and it's not going to be snowing outside right now. And I think that is a good lesson for us all in the advertising world to remember is, we can still make really good decisions. We can take into context of, not looking too deeply in like, oh, what happened on this specific hour of the day, maybe zoom out a little bit, um, look at the direction, the trend line that we're going in, and be able to make those decisions of, hey, where should I put my money? Is this channel working? Is this ad working? It doesn't have to be reality true in the sense of, oh, yes, exactly this number of people saw this ad. Um, just more so, is the ad working? Is this producing good results for our business? Should we put money here? Should we put money there? Is it directionally true? Is it telling us where we should be going, where we should be, putting our dollars as opposed to, worrying about the decimal points and the, oh, it's 201 orders versus 202 orders. Yeah, don't get lost in that. Just follow the direction of the data.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess another point to that is around like allowing enough time to be able to make decisions, right? Like thinking about, I feel like, something as a marketer myself, like, being ready to sort of jump the gun, when you see something that's a slight outlier or a slight change and sort of waiting to see, let the data settle and make sure that you're actually making a wise decision. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, it's so tempting to look at what's happening today or what happened an hour ago or even what happened yesterday. Um, yes, it is a challenge. It's something, we have a lot of conversations with here at our agency about trying to encourage people to really like take in the context, try to zoom out a little bit. Don't make drastic decisions off of limited sample size data. I mean, again, keeping in mind, all this data that we're working with is basically, it's a sample of the population. You're running advertising, your ad's not showing to everyone. It's showing only to a sample, maybe in a specific region or specific time of day. But yeah, we try to always encourage people to zoom out, try to keep in mind the context. Don't make decisions off of small time frames, small sample sizes. One kind of tactic we've implemented here that seemed to be working well is we try to communicate that not just internally, like reminding people and doing internal trainings, but we try to incorporate that into our data visualizations as well to try to always remind the end user, hey, are you checking the context here? So just one example is, again, we're working with advertising data. It's very common to have time series data. So instead of just showing like a line chart with just one, line of like last week or last 7 days or something like that, one recent change we've made is try to incorporate more time series data into that, more context. So like the line chart, instead of just being one line that's last week, it'll be last week and then another line, which is the same week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, to kind of give that context. It's very common in the advertising world of, oh, our KPI is down last week. What should we do? Should we move money? Should we do something? Oftentimes, if you just zoom out a little bit, you'll notice, oh, well, we were down last week, but we're only down because we were up a lot, 2 weeks ago. So we're actually fine, or we might even still be a little bit up. Oh, that's right, we had a sale, 2 weeks ago, or we had an influencer talk about our product. So we can still celebrate, that 2 weeks ago we were up a lot without, freaking out that we're down last week. So yeah, taking that context, zooming out, keeping in mind too of like, what's the sample size? Is this, we're talking about 1 week out of the year. We're talking about one day out of the, out of the year. Let's not make, drastic changes, drastic decisions, but yeah, take into effect that context of, zoom out a little bit. Overall, how are we doing? Is this just a blip, or is this something we should worry about? Maybe it is something that we need to look at. Hey, we've been trending down for a few weeks. Maybe we need to look at this, make some changes.
Yeah, that's really helpful. My next question is around reporting internally and reporting to clients and sort of what the difference is there from your perspective.
For us, we try to let the end client reporting needs kind of drive our internal needs as well. Mainly because the internal team members, they're the ones managing the advertising, and they're also the ones communicating to the client the end results. So we try to let that drive that decision of, hey, what questions are the clients asking? What are those common things that they're asking you that you have to provide an answer for? What are my KPI metrics for these time frames? These sorts of segments, things like that. What we've discovered too here recently is, as you can imagine, I think we talked about the diversity of clients. There's the common questions that always come up. But there really are some times where we've heard from our internal team members of sometimes they'll just ask questions that, they're great questions, but we've just never thought about that, in that way. So one reason kind of change we've made on our side too is try to give a little bit more control to the end user of let the dashboards be very interactive. So, we obviously have to present the data in a kind of a default way when the dashboard loads, but allowing the user to kind of swap out the metrics and the dimensions that they might want to see on a trend line. Because yeah, we've discovered that it's very common of, hey, for the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about this KPI metric, but then randomly, the client asked me this question. If the dashboard isn't ready to answer that question, it can put our internal team members in kind of a bind of, oh, let me pull up my other platform real quick and grab that number for you, as opposed to the dashboard is kind of flexible enough to say, oh yeah, let me just swap in that metric and we can look at that together. That's really helped. Flexibility. in the dashboard, and making sure again that the dashboard is kind of solving those end user problems. And the ultimate end user for us is our clients, right? We want to make sure that the dashboards are presenting the data and presenting the work that we're doing. So yeah, we let that kind of drive our design of start with the end user of the client, you know, and let that kind of filter into the team members of, hey, what do you need to kind of answer their questions?
Yeah, that makes sense. And what would you say in talking about metrics? What would you say like the top, two to three metrics that you find are sort of core to your performance or your client's performance and success? I would be curious to kind of get your perspective there as well.
Yeah, everyone has that primary conversion metric. So that's always number one is like, if it's an e-commerce site, it's going to be purchases. We're trying to sell stuff. Um, Other, lead generation clients is going to be a form fill. So I kind of group those all as like, what is the primary conversion? What's a success of the ad? So that's probably number one. And then, with that are kind of the efficiency metrics of that is like the cost per whatever that metric is. How much money did we spend to get one of those? And then the conversion rate of that metric, like how many clicks did it take to get that one? I think and 99% of our clients are really focusing on those three of like what's the primary thing we're trying to drive. Are we trying to drive downloads or form fills, or we're trying to sell people stuff, widgets? How much did it cost to get that one thing, and then how many clicks? So essentially, how many people did we have to send to the site before we can get that one? And those are the ones that most people, Google ads, Facebook ads, wherever you're running your media, you're keeping your finger on the pulse on those. Because then if you know those, you know how you can scale up. If you know how much it costs to get one, then you can obviously back into what should our monthly budget be.
You know exactly what you need to spend in order to hit those targets, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or you know how many clicks it's going to take to get there. So you can always back into, hey, if we need 100 more sales, we need this many more clicks. Yeah, it just turns into math at that point. Yeah.
In terms of just the kind of final quick one from me, what advice would you give someone that's really just starting out in the industry, as someone that's been in the industry for a long time and has tons of experience, like yourself? I'd be curious to get your thoughts there.
For the advertising world, I would say you're gonna have to learn a lot of technical stuff, how to connect APIs and data storage and SQL and stuff like that. You'll learn all that, but my biggest recommendation is talk to the people that are actually managing the advertising, the people that are running the ads in Google Ads and Facebook and TikTok display, things like that. Talk to them and really find out from them how they're doing their job, what metrics they look at in their daily and weekly, tasks, what questions they're hearing from clients, because the technical stuff, again, you're gonna have to learn that, this, the scripting and the API and the SQL, but keep if you can help those people that are managing the ads, use your technical skills, help them get that data in front of their eyes, in front of the clients. That's when you, I think, become a real success at this type of job in the advertising world is, um, you know, understanding what click-through rate is, what CPC, what CPM. These are metrics that people that manage ads, they deal with every single day. You need to understand what those metrics are. You need to understand why they're important, not just how to calculate them, but why they're important, what they mean, when they should be in a dashboard and when they should not. Yeah, talk to them, really understand, get a good understanding of what their jobs are, and that will really help you in presenting the data in a way that makes sense. Because I've definitely seen some people that present, advertising data, and it can become very obvious that they don't know, they're just technical. They're just making a dashboard. They don't really know what's important. They're bringing up, putting things on the page that just don't make sense. So yeah, definitely talk to the people who are running the ads, really understand where their, needs are, and I think that'll really help you out.
Cool. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Landon. I really appreciate your time today. And thanks again for all your insights. And yeah, I think we will wrap it up there.
Thanks so much.